an unexpected player could be a huge difference maker for the Pittsburgh Steelers down the stretch. The master plan for Jaylen Warren will also be revealed in this video. Serious implications on the Pittsburgh Steelers offense that has been cooking as of late thanks to Russell Wilson. Jaylen Warren led the Steelers in targets in Week 14, and I expect that to continue. More on Jaylen Warren coming up on this episode of Steelers Digest. My name is Remington Kuhn. Thank you for watching the video today. If you haven't clicked the subscribe button, please press that button now, and let's get into the content. First, we have to talk about the new Hard Knocks episode that just dropped last night. Obviously, a show featuring all of the AFC North teams. The Steelers, the Bengals, the Ravens, the Browns, they're all featured on Hard Knocks mid-season for 2024. It has been a really fun watch for these first two episodes, but there was one thing that happened in last night's episode that was more memorable than anything else, hands down, and it was the quote that Mike Tomlin said about Mr. Joey Porter Jr., the star corner. He said to Joey Porter Jr., I want you to be great at the end of the day. You're going to be great, but you ain't going to be great today. And I think that really resonates with me and really resonates with a lot of former athletes of what Mike Tomlin just said. It's him instilling his belief in his player that, dude, you're not going to be a superstar overnight. It's going to take a lot of growing pains for you to get to the point that we want you to be at. And for Joey Porter Jr., he struggled a lot. He's been criticized by the public way too much. Joey Porter Jr. was drafted at Penn State. Okay, he was expected to be this lockdown corner for the Steelers. He was expected to shut down the other team's number one. That's not an easy task in the NFL. Now, Quinyon Mitchell for the Eagles is making that look pretty easy right now, but there is nothing easy about playing against the other team's best receiver. And Joey Porter Jr. is tasked with that pretty much every week for the Steelers. So, yes, he's going to get a few penalties every once in a while. I'd rather him be physical and actually show some effort out there and try to stop somebody that is significantly more skilled than he is and farther along in their development. Obviously, his dad was a great player for the Steelers, Joey Porter Sr., but now Joey Porter Jr. is here, and it's in his blood to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. So he's going to be a Steeler for a long time. I really do believe that. Again, Penn State player. I'm a huge Penn State fan, so I've always had a soft spot for Joey Porter Jr. He gets criticized way too much, though, guys. He really does. People need to understand the growth and development of NFL players, and it's not a linear thing. It really isn't. So for Joey Porter Jr., I'm just asking everybody, please be patient with this guy, because his performance against the Cleveland Browns after he took 6 penalties against the Cincinnati Bengals, 6 penalties against the Bengals, he played so much better. It was a night and day difference between Joey Porter against the Bengals and then against the Browns in Week 14. So give Joey Porter a chance. Understand that this growth is not going to be a linear process and that he is going to be a great player for the Steelers for a long time. We have to be patient with him. We can't criticize him. He has been probably the most criticized player on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Among me, other Steelers fans, just my other friends that are football fans, Joey Porter Jr. gets a lot of hate. And I don't understand it. I mean, I get the guy takes a lot of penalties, but I love that physical play. He brings a brand of football that is Pittsburgh Steelers football, and you have to appreciate it at some point. You have to understand that Joey Porter is not going to just lock down the other team's number one receiver every game. There's going to be, growing pains in his development. He's going to struggle. He's going to get burnt every once in a while. For Joey Porter, his main thing that he needs to focus on right now is just being a little bit more disciplined and not taking those penalties. I still love the physicality, and some officials are more likely to give players the benefit of the doubt and not call penalties when they absolutely do not need to. So I'm just saying Joey Porter Jr. is doing his thing. We need to continue to let him do his thing and just appreciate that he is a Pittsburgh Steeler. He's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, and he's a huge reason why this team is where they're at right now, and he will only get better moving forward. So Mike Tomlin instilling that confidence in Joey Porter Jr., I believe, is huge for Pittsburgh. So Joey Porter Jr., a key player for the Steelers, moving down the stretch. Let's get into the next topic, and that is Jaylen Warren is the key to unlocking the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Obviously, Jaylen Warren played a big role in their last game against the Cleveland Browns. He was the most targeted player by Russell Wilson in that game, in the first game that George Pickens was absent. He was also, now let's look at this graphic, the highest rated Pittsburgh Steeler according to PFF Pro Football Focus graded him at an 86.3 in the Week 14 matchup against the Cleveland Browns. And I think that tells you everything you need to know. There's a reason he was getting the ball, and it's because he is electric when he gets the ball in his hands. I have a little picture here of Jaylen Warren just breaking free away from Denzel Ward, who's trying to tackle him after he already got the first down for the Steelers on 1st and 10. You know, these big plays that Jaylen Warren is able to break off, and this change of pace between him and Najee Harris. Najee Harris is that guy that's just going to come at you. And then Jaylen Warren, with his speed and shiftiness, is a perfect third down back, perfect, receiving back out of the backfield. He just brings a lot to the table that the Steelers haven't really seen, other than, Najee Harris every once in a while getting those catches. And let's show a graphic of that as well. This is a comparison between Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris for the 2023 and 2024 seasons combined. Obviously, Warren has missed time due to injury, and that's one of the reasons, honestly, why he hasn't been more of a factor for the Steelers up until this point. So you just got to give Jaylen Warren his due, and obviously he was the best player on the offense in that last game. So just continue to be patient with Jaylen Warren, easing him back in. Obviously, I've been open about my criticism of Jaylen Warren. I really have in the past, and Jaylen Warren's a great player, but he's had issues fumbling the ball, and that's one of my biggest issues with him was ball security. But when Jaylen Warren's on his game, he is such an important player to this offense. And let's go back to that graphic that I just had up as well. Jaylen Warren being utilized in the passing game is the key to unlocking the Steelers' success. Like I said, he led the team in targets in Week 14. That is a big deal. If you have that trust with Russell Wilson and you're being implemented in the passing game at that capacity, it's a big deal. So I would just like to continue to see Jaylen Warren get more and more targets for the Steelers because he's such an important player, such an explosive player that they can really utilize. And you see the stats there. I mean, he's averaging more yards a carry by 0.8 than Najee Harris in the last 2 years. He's averaging 4.8. Najee's only averaging 4, and the receptions are just one way to get the ball in this guy's hands. He is explosive, and he is an asset for this team. So I just want to be able to use him to the best of our ability, and I do feel like that is the key to the Steelers really taking that next step up in the offense, especially with George Pickens being out. Jaylen Warren needs to have the ball in his hands because he's arguably the most dynamic playmaker on the team now that Pickens is not there. But with that said, let's jump into the next player that I feel like could be a huge asset for the Steelers going down the stretch. We're going to talk rumors regarding the Steelers wide receiver room first and foremost, because there are some big rumors out there right now about players the Steelers could bring in. But I'm a firm believer that the player that the Steelers need the most is on the inside already and just hasn't gotten that opportunity to prove himself yet. Okay, I'm not going to get into that yet. Let's first talk about the rumors, and then we'll talk about the player that I feel like could be the biggest factor for the Steelers down the stretch. A player that we don't talk about nearly enough, well, for a good reason. He's been injured. But first, let's talk about the actual rumors that are surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers and a player that they could potentially bring in. His name is KJ Osborne. The Patriots waived KJ Osborne in a mutual decision just yesterday. This is a player that had a lot of success in Minnesota as a number 3 receiver and even as a number 2 receiver. He was brought to New England on a $4 million one-year deal, really to be one of their number 1 receivers, if not their number 1 receiver. And he just didn't live up to the hype, live up to the expectations. There's a lot of, disconnect between him and their organization. So he hasn't really gotten a fair shot, I believe. But a team like the Steelers could be really interested in bringing a guy like that in. But my argument for why not to bring a guy like that in, even though he could be an impact player for the Pittsburgh Steelers, is the fact that they already have a player in their organization that could be a huge factor. 3 receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Wilson's comp coming out of the draft, and my personal comp for Roman Wilson, was Tyler Lockett. That was a receiver that Russell Wilson relied on so much in his time in Seattle when they won a Super Bowl. Roman Wilson is that Tyler Lockett type receiver. He's a perfect receiver to complement George Pickens, Mike Williams, Calvin Austin. You need those kind of guys and that kind of change of speed, just like I argued with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren in the backfield. Same goes for wide receivers, skill position players, all the same to me. So I would love to see, utilization of him in this offense. And obviously he suffered a few injuries, and that's why he hasn't really had an opportunity to showcase what he can do for the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's been a lot of, concerns with injuries as it pertains to Roman Wilson. Obviously, he had an ankle injury in training camp that sidelined him. And then as he was trying to be implemented into the offense, he didn't play hardly any snaps. And then bang, he injures his hamstring. So he missed a lot of time. He's still rehabbing. The practice window hasn't even been open yet for Roman Wilson to come back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I would like to see that happen sooner rather than later. Pickens is out. It's a good time. No time like the present to try to re-implement Roman Wilson into this offense. Again, you invested a third-round pick in him out of Michigan. He was a great receiver in college. I showed you that graphic just a moment ago about his stats in college and what he was able to do at Michigan. So I would love to see Roman Wilson slowly worked into this offense for the Steelers. I really think he could be such an important piece down the stretch. With that said, I'm just a believer in Omar Khan. He drafted Roman Wilson for a reason, especially with the comp that I made to Tyler Lockett. Other people obviously see that too, as you saw the graphic in front of you. Him and Jaylen Warren could be everything that the Pittsburgh Steelers need to really unlock this offense, get to that next level, and be able to win shootout games like they did against the Bengals. That was the Steelers offense at their best against Cincinnati, and they're going to need to do things like that down the stretch as well to win games, especially if you find a team like the Buffalo Bills in the playoffs or the Ravens. Against the Ravens is not a good example because we do have defensive games against the Ravens, but let's just say the Bills, because the last Steelers playoff game was a loss to the Bills. You can't win a shootout against Josh Allen unless you have a competent quarterback. With the Steelers now have that in Russell Wilson, and they can use Roman Wilson and Jaylen Warren to take that offense to the upper echelon and beat a team like the Buffalo Bills in a playoff game. So let's start now to implement those guys, and then when the playoffs hit, they are ready to go, and they can be impact players for the Steelers. Thank you guys for watching this episode of Steelers Digest. My name is Remington Kuhn. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more Pittsburgh Steelers content, rumors, news, all of it. Analysis, we got it all on Steelers Digest. So subscribe to the channel and see you next time on the next episode of Steelers Digest.